What is up, guys? In case you missed it, Francis Ngannou sat down with Ariel Halwani and he kind of explained, his version of the contract negotiations and why he ultimately left the UFC. Now, one of the main things I think is really interesting is what exactly Francis was demanding in these negotiations with the UFC. Because according to him, it is a misconception that, the entire thing centered around money and getting increased fighter pay. That was a big part of it, but it wasn't really the central part. Francis, in his interview with Ariel, kind of explained that, hey, some of his demands that were in negotiations included healthcare insurance for fighters. He also wanted a fighter, representative on the board of directors. And he also made it clear that, these demands weren't specifically just for Francis, but for all fighters. Francis really saw himself as trying to, yes, the money was a central component of the negotiations, but it wasn't everything. He wanted healthcare. He wanted better representation for from fighters. And I think that's something really, really important to highlight here, because I feel like a lot of people have said that, hey, Francis is just looking for more money. He's not a prize. He's not a draw like Conor McGregor was or John Jones. He's shooting too high. And I think it's important to say, hey, the money was never really the central part of everything. That is a misconception that even me, and I'll be guilty, that's what I thought the main thing was about, the money. But no, it really was about better fighter representation and better fighter benefits. Now, a second thing that I think is also really important to highlight is this whole notion that, Francis was, quote, quote, ducking, John Jones. I've seen a lot of fighters come out and push back against this. I actually saw a thread where, people have highlighted all the times that Dana White has used the, he's scared to fight, as an excuse for when fighters, fight the UFC and there's contractor disputes. But guys, no, Francis was never scared of John Jones. And Francis has even said that, hey, one of the main things he wanted in these negotiations was a 3-fight clause. He wanted to go and have a Stipe trilogy. He wanted to fight John Jones, and then after fighting John Jones, he wanted to, either rematch him or do some other things. But he had a 3-fight clause in the negotiations that he really wanted to do. So this whole idea that, Francis, was scared of John Jones or Stipe is not true. Francis was very adamant in his negotiations that, hey, he wanted a 3-fight clause, he wanted Stipe, he wanted maybe a Sorrel gone, and he wanted John Jones. And now, a really third most important thing to really highlight here, guys, is the whole idea of the boxing fight. And this kind of ties into, point 2 with the whole, he's scared to fight. But Francis kind of clarified and he said, hey, yes, I would have loved to fight for boxing, to do not a celebrity boxing match, but, do a boxing mega fight. But again, this was not the main sticking point of negotiations, just like the money, right? I was something that I thought was a big focus of the negotiations. Francis wants to go and do boxing. That is the main reason why we're having this contractual dispute. But no, he said, no, that is not true. He said he would have loved to work with the UFC to get the boxing match. And then if it didn't work, it didn't work. He wanted to go do a boxing mega fight, and then again circle back to the UFC, and then again fight Stipe and fight Sorrel. Francis, wanted to work with the UFC to set up a boxing mega fight. But again, that was not the main sticking argument or the central part of his negotiations. Again, circling back to really just trying to better fighters' benefits, that health insurance, that, representation on the board of directors for fighters. Again, things like that were the central issue for Francis Ngannou. The fourth thing, guys, again, and there's a lot of points. Francis's interview was pretty extensive, but again, this kind of goes into the money thing. But the whole idea of him being the most paid fighter. In the interview, Francis said, again, shout out Ariel Halwani for this interview and having Francis on. Francis said that he was being offered about $8 million for his contract to fight John Jones. But again, guys, Francis turned that down because, again, money was not the main thing, the main issue. And now, guys, finally, the fifth and last main reason or main sticking point that I think everyone should really know is the fact that, guys, Francis himself has said, and I think this is the most important one, is never say never. Francis has said that, hey, there is a possibility in the future that he may return to the UFC. He said, don't close that chapter. Who knows what could happen in the future. We very well could see Francis come back to the UFC. I wouldn't hold your breath for it, guys. You know what I mean? I don't see the UFC caving in on any of these demands, but I think that's really important to know that Francis has not shut the door closed on the UFC. There's a possibility that after exploring other promotions, boxing, mega fights, he may come back to the UFC and we still may get that mega fight that we want with him and Jon Jones. Now, what does the timeline for that look like? I have no clue. I mean, Francis is already relatively a little old. So, I mean, who knows? You know, that's up in the air. But again, I think that's really important. I feel like, for me personally, you know, I thought that, you know, Francis was completely done with the UFC. But no, guys, that chapter is not officially closed. You know, never say never. There is a possibility that Francis can return. But yeah, guys, those are 5 main takeaways that I really wanted to highlight. Again, shout out to Ariel Halwani shout out Ariel Halwani for this interview with Francis as well. But those are some of the main sticking points that you know, that Francis kind of said and highlighted. And yeah, guys, you know, so with that, you know, that includes this video. What are your guys' thoughts, you know, on Francis's interview? You know, some of his main sticking points, you know, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with him? You know, do you not? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments section below, guys. But I think this was really, really insightful to get the other perspective from Francis, the person himself, you know. So we only really heard from Dana White so far. So I think it's really important. So thanks for watching this video, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video.